Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here, back with another Canadian benefit update for you. And if you missed yesterday's video, there was some huge information that was just released about the whole CERB repayment situation, as well as some potential tax changes for this year when it comes to repaying money that you owe for your taxes for the benefits that you've received this year. As of that last video, we were only reporting on these news articles that had various sources backing this up, but as of now, the CRA has put out a press statement that goes through the exact wording of exactly what is going to happen when it comes to these new changes, and exactly the wording they're going to use in order to verify whether or not you're eligible. So today is just going to be a quick video walking you through this document that they've released and sort of analyzing it to show what that means for you. And we'll also read into the language a little bit here and do a little bit of analysis to try to get a better idea of which way the government is leaning when it comes to the extension of these benefits, which are going to end for many people at the end of March. And of course, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell and watch the video all the way to the end. That's the #1 way you can help this Canadian channel grow. So here's the news release that I'm talking about. If you want to read it for yourself, there's a link down in the description where you can find all of this information on this exact website. But let's dive in. First off, they say, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government of Canada has provided urgently needed income support to millions of Canadians, which has helped them put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads during this crisis. The federal government is committed to continuing to support Canadians throughout this crisis. This seems to be one of the main talking points for all of the politicians who are handling this policy. It's that they'll continue to have Canadians back, or in this case, the federal government's committed to continuing to support Canadians. Now, what that means in terms of whether or not benefits will be extended is up for debate, but it seems like if they're really pushing this talking point, it seems like it's more leaning towards the thought of this being extended if they are truly meaning what they're saying, that we want to have people's backs all the way until the end of this. Then they go on to say that today the government of Canada announced that self-employed individuals who applied for the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and would have qualified based on their gross income will not be required to repay the benefit, provided they also met all other eligibility requirements. The same approach will apply whether the individual applied through the Canada Revenue Agency or through Service Canada. One key sentence to note in here is provided they also met all other eligibility requirements. Let me explain why this is significant. When this information was first announced yesterday, there were a lot of people who reacted rather negatively to the news, thinking that this meant that every single person who applied for the CERB, even if they applied fraudulently, would be able to have this debt forgiven. But this sentence reveals that that is not the case. This is only for the people who applied to this program thinking that they were using their gross income to qualify rather than their net income to qualify. You'll remember that to qualify for the CERB, you had to have $5,000 in income, and the whole conflict arose when people didn't know if it was net or gross income that they were using to qualify. So anybody who applied based on the gross income, all of the money they made, and thought that that was the standard to qualify for, this is for them. They will have this debt forgiven because of the mistake that the Canadian government and the CRA made. But other people who applied and didn't meet other eligibility requirements, it seems that the CRA is still going to be looking for you to pay that back if they determine that you were ineligible at the time you applied. This does, however, make you wonder how they're going to actually implement these changes, right? It seems like they may have to go on a case-by-case basis to verify every single person who's looking to have this CERB debt forgiven. Now, they did hire a lot more people onto the CRA recently, so maybe they have the capacity to go through every single case on a case-by-case basis, but I'm thinking that there's going to be quite a hefty processing time for many people who are trying to have this debt forgiven, or people who have already paid this back and are looking to get their money back from the CRA. Again, stay tuned to the channel, because as soon as I know the way in which they're administrating this and what you have to do to have the debt forgiven, I'll be sure to let you know right here on the channel, so make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned. They then go on to say that this means that self-employed individuals whose net self-employment income was less than $5,000 and who applied for the CERB will not be required to pay the CERB as long as their gross self-employment income was at least $5,000 and they met all other eligibility criteria. This is exactly what we just talked about. Some self-employed individuals whose net self-employment income was less than $5,000 may have already voluntarily repaid the CERB. The CRA and Service Canada will return any repaid amounts to these individuals individuals. Additional details will be available in the coming weeks. Exactly what we were just talking about again. But let's scroll down here and let's continue. And here's where we get into the tax portion of this statement, right? You'll remember that they just announced that people who applied for any of these benefits at least once will not have to pay interest on their taxes for the next year, essentially acting as a deferral. Let's see the exact wording they use here. In addition, today, the Honorable Diane LeBouthier, Minister of National Revenue, announced that the Government of Canada will provide targeted interest relief to Canadians who received COVID-related income support benefits. Once individuals have filed their 2020 income tax and benefit return, they will not be required to pay interest on any outstanding income tax debt for the 2020 tax year until April 30th, 2022. This will give Canadians more time and flexibility to pay if they have an amount owing. Again, this is similar to the information that was reported yesterday, but it's nice to have the exact wording from the CRA so we can know what to expect moving forward. And here I believe they're going to get into who exactly qualifies for this targeted interest relief. They say to qualify for targeted interest relief, individuals must have had a total taxable income of $75,000 or less in 2020 and have received income support in 2020 through one or more of the following COVID-19 measures, and it lists all of these measures: the CERB, the CESB, the CRB, the CRCB, the CRSB, EI, or similar provincial emergency benefits. Now, this similar provincial emergency benefits would apply to you if your province has given you anything in terms of benefits that could be considered income on your taxes. It's going to account for that as well if you applied for this. And something interesting to note here is that they use this $75,000 limit. If you make over that, you can't apply for this tax interest deferral or this amnesty for your taxes, which is the wording that they're using for it a lot. So anybody in that range can defer their taxes for one full year, and I'd probably recommend you do so. Even if you have the money right now, in my eyes, why not invest it in something very low risk and make a little bit of interest, maybe a high interest savings account, and then pay it back after this year deferral that the Canadian government is offering you. Again, that's not professional advice, just something that you can personally think about and decide on your own if that sounds like a good idea for you. They go on saying the Canada Revenue Agency will automatically apply the interest relief measure for individuals who met these criteria. So essentially what that means is they have enough information on you to determine whether or not you're eligible for this interest deferral, so you're not going to have to do anything to apply for this program that they're implementing. So a lot of that has been what we expected from the document that we reviewed last time. But here's where it gets interesting. This is going to apply for anybody who has any sort of child tax benefits or any sort of employment insurance. You're going to want to actually still file your taxes this year, even though you may not be required to pay. Let me show you why. Additionally, any CRA administered credits and benefits normally paid monthly or quarterly, such as the Canada Child Benefit and the Goods and Services Tax / Harmonized Sales Tax Credit, will not be applied to reduce individuals' tax debt owing for the 2020 tax year. Canadians are strongly encouraged to file their tax returns by the filing deadline to ensure that their benefit payments continue without interruption. This is the key part right here at the end. So when this news was announced, I saw many people in the comments saying, hey, I'm just not going to do my taxes this year. Okay, it's a stress off my back. I'm good. Well, here they're recommending that you do still do your taxes this year, even if you're not required to pay your taxes. Now, the reason they're saying to do this is because in Canada, many of the supports and benefits that are available to people use your income taxes to determine to what extent you're eligible for these benefits or these tax credits, or if you're eligible at all. So I'd recommend still doing your taxes this year to make sure that you are actually receiving all of the benefits or all of the tax credits that you're eligible for. Again, here on the channel, we're going to be covering that more in the future, and the forms that you're going to need to look out for. Remember, there's the T4E and the T4A forms that are going to show you what the government believes you received in terms of benefits, but we'll talk more about that on another video. All right, and here are some statements from these ministers that have brought us these changes, and inside of these statements, we can sort of read into what their views are on benefits going forward, because I know that's something that's important to a lot of people who are facing this impending deadline at the end of March when they'll be cut off from the CRB as it stands right now. This quote is from Carla Qualtrough, who's the Minister of Employment, someone that we talked about on the live stream yesterday and in that previous video, but she says that from day one, we said we would be there to help Canadians get through this difficult time. time. Emergency supports like CERB helped millions of Canadians pay for things like food and rent. We made the CERB's eligibility criteria as broad and inclusive as possible so that workers who need support could get it. That little bit is interesting. Right here, I think she's kind of explaining why there were actually some hiccups in this whole process, saying, hey, we made it really broad so that many people could apply at the start, and we've sort of been trying to figure out how we can make sure that it's fair going forward for everybody. They've faced a fair amount of criticism on this, but their go-to thing has been saying, hey, we made it broad and inclusive so that people could apply quickly and get the support they needed on time. She continues saying this announcement is giving certainty to self-employed Canadians who applied for the CERB in good faith while also protecting their financial well-being. We have gone to great lengths to support workers during this pandemic and will continue to do so as we build back together. So this is the significant portion when you take a look at the government's policy moving forward when it comes to future benefits. Some people think it's a little bit silly to read into these words as closely as I do when it comes to the language and the words they're using, but I've really found it to be a good indicator of what's to come in the future. You'll remember back in December, Carla Qualtrough did an interview on the CBC where she said, hey, we're not going to forgive any CERB debt, but the language she used kind of left it open for interpretation and open so that the government could change their mind later, which we've now seen with this announcement. So that kind of makes me feel validated in the validity of actually going this deep on the language and analyzing what it really means for the future. And again, them focusing on this, we will build back together, we will continue to support Canadians as we do so, kind of hints to them potentially considering extending the benefits. Now, nothing's for sure, nothing's certain as of right now, but we're just sort of trying to gather evidence to see what route the government's going to take moving forward. And this very same sentiment is emphasized here with the other minister that we've been talking about, Diane Lebouthie. She says our government will continue to do whatever it takes for however long it takes to get through the current public health crisis, and that today's announcements demonstrates Canada Revenue Agency's commitment to putting Canadians at the center of everything it does. We will continue to provide support to Canadians as they tackle the many challenges of this pandemic until they are able to get back on their feet. So we see here the Liberal government taking this firm stance that these income supports are the way that they're going to move forward for as long as this pandemic runs. There have been a lot of critics that are saying this is not where the focus should be. Instead, the focus should be on jobs first, and that we shouldn't keep printing money to hand out to people. And it's sort of skewed the population in terms of opinion. So let me know what you think. Is it something that we should focus on, giving out these benefits to people and expanding until we're able to safely open up our economy fully? Or do you think that there should be more of an emphasis on increasing the amount of tests that we can do in certain sectors to get more people back to work sooner? Where do you think that the priorities should lie? Let me know what you think down in the description. I'd be interested in hearing your opinion. And if you want to keep the conversation going or ask any questions directly, we're always talking about this sort of thing in our Discord server. There's a link down there and you can join the community. It's an app where you can get in there and talk to each other, ask each other questions, and I'm in there from time to time answering questions as well. So feel free to hop in right down there in the description. And I want to take a second to thank you for watching all the way until the end of this video. More and more it seems that YouTube is prioritizing videos in which the viewers watch all the way until the end, and if they recognize that people are doing that, they'll send the video out to more people who could need this information. So I really appreciate you sticking around. And on that note, if you haven't already done so, feel free to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and share this video with a friend who you think could benefit from this information. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video's helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.